Hey, 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 what's up, little puppers? I just got done watching Marvel's What If Episode 3, and in today's video, I'm gonna be talking about it. So be sure to get comfortable and don't go anywhere else. Yes, this is a threat. And just a reminder, these videos are made possible by my supporters on this platform, so if you do want to support me, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And be sure to check out the Patreon link in the description below. So just to recap, I'm pretty lukewarm on Marvel's What If so far. I think it's definitely one of the weaker things that has come from the MCU. And I guess that's fair given the nature of it. Seems to be that it's just a standalone mini-series. But all the same, they seem to be framing it as like this small things, small changes in the MCU that have big ripple effects and that it might tie into the multiverse saga. And the framing device of The Watcher definitely kind of feeds into that. So I don't know if this show is just meant to be a little fun side story or if it is building into the multiverse saga, and I'm gonna be real, I'm not sure if the show's even sure what it wants to be here. So the first episode, Captain Carter, I thought was just okay. Like, you know, you've got the change of Steve Rogers to Peggy Carter instead, but not much of the overall story really changed. It didn't really have a substantial ripple effect. Then we move over to What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord, where I feel like the basic premise was okay, but the ripple effect was far too big, and flanderized a number of characters in the process, namely T'Challa and Thanos. In the way that King T'Challa kind of gained his diplomacy through his upbringing, and even then it was still always put to the test, yet in this episode it was just effortless, and we didn't get that conscientious side to T'Challa that I really love the most. And then with Thanos being able to be talked out of the Infinity Snap by just an argument, which the writers have clarified was just an argument, I felt that really undercut a lot of what makes Thanos Thanos, and I kind of just think it shouldn't be different for the sake of different. I feel like little ripple effects should earn those differences, and that's what I feel the show's been really lacking in. It either hasn't got enough of a ripple effect, or it has a ripple effect and just didn't earn it. With episode 3, however, which is What If the Earth's Mightiest Heroes didn't come together. I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was just like, yeah, what if the Earth didn't have its mightiest heroes, basically. I feel like they struck a much better balance this time around. But there are some little problems I still have with it, and there are some things that I would like to see expanded upon further. So for the most part, this episode is like an MCU murder mystery, and I love that about this. Someone is going around picking off individual members of the Avengers team before the Avengers have even assembled. So we're back in phase 1 of the MCU. It begins at Iron Man 2, and we see through the Incredible Hulk, we see through the events of Thor, all the way up to the events of the Avengers. And someone is basically framing different members of the Avengers for basically killing each other off. And the deaths in this are really well thought out, at least for the most part. The only one I didn't quite buy was Thor. I didn't think Hawkeye's arrows could legitimately kill Thor, unless I'm missing something there. Iron Man's death here was clever, it was unexpected, the way it was written into the scene from Iron Man 2 was really smart. I like that bit there, that's just fine. If someone would tell me though, were they using pre-recorded audio from Iron Man 2 of RDJ doing the voice of Tony Stark? Because honestly, if that is the new impersonator, I couldn't tell the difference. Whoever it was, if it wasn't Robert Downey Jr., did an impressive and formidable job. Then of course there's Hawkeye just mysteriously dying while in confinement after being framed for the death of Thor. And one thing that was just really great to see was a revisitation of the events of the Incredible Hulk, and we got to see Betty Ross again, and we got to see Mark Ruffalo in scenes from the Incredible Hulk, and that was just awesome to see, because the Incredible Hulk, I think it's the weakest of the MCU films, but it is nice to see it revisited because it kind of goes forgotten in the grand scheme of things, and it's kind of the is it or is it not canon. Obviously, Thunderbolt Ross has been in subsequent films, and obviously we've got Bruce Banner, the Hulk, and everything, but we've never seen Betty Ross again, and like, we got her back here. And I'm gonna say this, the Hulk's death, I know it's animated and it's not particularly gory or anything, but that was shocking. Just seeing him inflate like that bugged the crap out of me. That was like, oh gosh, That looks painful. That's horrible. And just the whole thing is seeing Nick Fury under duress as he's basically losing the team that he's worked hard to get together to protect the Earth from threats such as Loki. And Loki does, of course, arrive, but with the intent of avenging Thor, who was obviously killed by seemingly Clint Barton. So it's revealed that Hope Van Dyne was killed in a mission, and basically Hank Pym, who is now the Yellow Jacket in this universe, is out to avenge her. And that is basically by bringing S.H.I.E.L.D. to its knees and bringing the Avengers to their knees. So he's basically shrinking down and killing the Avengers, and I think he was a great choice of villain for this story. For one thing, I love that they took the opportunity to do this version of Hank Pym's character that we basically haven't seen in the MCU, and probably never under any normal circumstances would. We'd never get to see him as the Yellow Jacket. The MCU movies don't really have the time for that. They've bypassed that story. They went straight to Scott Lang as well. But here we have this over-the-edge Hank Pym who's had enough, and clearly his eyebrows have as well, Jesus. And he's out for blood, and we get this whole scene of him and Nick Fury at this graveyard, and they've got the grave of Hope Van Dyne as well. And we're really seeing that darker side of Hank Pym that hasn't been explored as much in the MCU, but it doesn't feel like he was Flanderized here. It doesn't just feel like, oh, he's evil now because the story commands it. It all feels cohesive. Hank Pym was never quite the hero that Scott Lang would go on to be, and especially like in the comic books as well, Hank Pym is a very complicated guy. And there's this fight scene between him and Nick Fury, which legitimately, it did have me kind of wondering a little bit, like, what's going on here? Because Nick is suddenly able to teleport and sort of clone himself and stuff, and I was like, what's going on here? It's revealed eventually, and like, I realized it just before the reveal. Is like, he's teamed up with Loki, and I thought that was a really good use of these two characters. And like, I like the fact that Loki is also trying to avenge something. Like, Loki is kind of a secondary villain in this, in that he's trying to avenge Thor, and we've got Hank Pym, who's trying to avenge Hope, and it's like, the Avengers have been killed by these two people, well, by you know, Hank, who's trying to avenge someone. Like, both of the villains are trying to avenge someone. It's the Avengers in its own little way. So I thought this one had a really solid story with some really solid themes, and yeah, I just like the way it came together. I really like the ending as well, where it's revealed that Loki took over the United Nations and united the planet, and he basically succeeded in his plan to make the world kneel. I do, however, think the drama of this ending is a little undercut by the arrival of Captain Marvel, which basically suggests that Loki will get defeated in the end. Although I'm gonna say this, I really hope they expand on this. Like, I hope we're getting sequel episodes in this What If universe, because I think there's so much more they can do with that premise of what if Loki won. Heck, we could have that episode dedicated to Carol Danvers taking down the Loki Legion. One criticism I will say is, like, I don't mind the humor in the MCU. I think it can get a little intrusive from time to time, but like in this episode, it just fell flat every time. For example, like Nick Fury's cell phone going off during the confrontation with Loki, and Phil Coulson's love of Steve Rogers. It fell flat for me. It didn't work this time. It felt forced, you know? And I wouldn't imagine that Nick Fury would be afraid to pick up the phone during the confrontation. I wouldn't imagine that he'd need Loki to say, pick up the phone. But, you know, it's not massively egregious. It's just, I don't know, I don't think it worked here. But overall, yeah, I think episode 3 really showed off much more of what this show's potential was. Like, actual what-if stories that don't require the Flanderization of any characters and have big ripple effects. That's what I was hoping to see this whole time, and I'm hoping we get more of this and less of, oh, what if this character was this character? Like, I don't know who cared about these things ahead of time. Like, what if Steve Rogers was Spider-Man is like a rumored episode, and it's like, who cares? Who cares, you know? I certainly never asked that question. It's like, how are they even going to get him in a position where he can become Spider-Man organically? That's all I want, is just that attention to detail, that sense that this could have been the MCU if things just went a little differently. But I like to think that these are choices that certain characters are making, as opposed to just things happen to be different. It's like, you know, my issues with episode 2 and the Thanos twist. Like, if they did an episode where it's like, what if Thanos had a better upbringing, and then tied that into the King T'Challa episode, then yeah, that would really solve everything. I just want that attention to detail and that respect for the characters that have been set up. Like, I want the characters to play by the same rules, but for the events to be different effectively. that's so much more of an intriguing premise than just this kind of anything goes thing that we've had so far. Episode 3 did it for me. They did it right, so more like this, please, Marvel. What do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And of course, in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including the Patreon. If you're feeling extra generous like these guys in the $10 tier, that is Marcus Ward, Sirius the Skeptic, Biotinance, and Mr. SP. Thank you guys, you are the best of the best, but as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.